All right, so what's going on, guys? So I just wanted to do a quick little tutorial on how to play my favorite character in this game, Leo Whitefang. Now, some of you guys might know this character as an absolute silverback gorilla Unga Bunga style, and that is kind of true. However, Leo is still classified as a quote-unquote versatile all-rounder. There's a couple unique things about Leo. First thing that you're going to realize is that he does not have a traditional dash like everyone else in the game. He actually has a step dash, right? So if you are using a dash macro, which honestly, I highly recommend everyone to be doing that. And if you're not using it, please map it on your controller right now. Leo will dash like this, and you can do some funky things with that. So for one, you can block during that entire animation. So if you're holding back while dashing, you can dash block. The other thing that you can do with it, Leo can carry his dash momentum into his normals. So just to give you an example, we're going to back up a little bit here. This is Leo's 5K. As you can see, it already gives him a little bit of forward momentum. With dash momentum, this is how far Leo will travel just by pressing 5K. Do you see how much space that covers? It's crazy. That also does apply to special moves. So for example, if he uses 2-3-6S, he'll hit from a ridiculous range. Now, the other thing that Leo does have that is pretty unique to him is he actually has multiple stances. Now, as you'll notice, Leo is currently in his front turn stance. This is his default stance. It's much more defensive oriented. As you can see, he has his long range pokes. He also, in this stance, if you hold either his far slash button or his heavy slash button, you will enter guard point. This stance will allow Leo to block attacks, as well as do a follow-up attack by pressing the opposite button to the one that you're holding. So if you're holding H, just press S, and he will do an attack. This attack can also be special canceled. And if that wasn't enough, the follow-up to the guard point stance also has armor. And the final stance that Leo has, and the one that we all care about the most, is his infamous back turn stance. Leo has three main ways of getting into his back turn stance. You can either throw, use 2-3-6H, or 2-1-4-S and hold S. We'll be discussing those a little bit more in depth here later. So yes, while we all know that back turn is an incredibly powerful stance, it's not like Leo doesn't come with his weaknesses. All of Leo's pokes extend his hurt box, except for a select few. He only has a couple disjointed moves. So Leo has to play neutral pretty carefully because even with his buttons that give him massive range, he is susceptible to being counterpoked. And on top of that, in front turn stance, I really think that Leo is above average. So he's definitely still good in his front turn stance. But I think in a game where there are people that can literally summon gun, being above average just isn't enough to cut it. So Leo does have to work kind of hard to get his win condition. And I know that might be kind of controversial to say, but honestly, it's not just as easy as get back turn and win the game. You still have to do a little bit of work to get there. So who should play Leo? Well, if you like being crazy, unga bunga, gambling, and things like that, yeah, I 100% recommend this character. He is so much fun to do crazy rushdown stuff with. If that kind of playstyle is a little bit too mindless for you, if you want to play a character that requires a little bit more thought, maybe this character just isn't for you, but honestly, he's just so much fun, guys. He's great. So while we're here, we might as well talk about Leo's key moves. Now, the first key move that we're going to be talking about is Leo's 5H. This button here is great. It has excellent range. That downward angle makes it good for sniping out low pokes from a far range. And on top of that, on counter hit, this move gives you insane reward. And like I discussed earlier, by holding H, you can enter guard point stance, which is honestly pretty good for Leo's neutral. But it does come with the downside of the fact that Leo extends his hurt boxes with his long range pokes. So this move is susceptible to being counterpoked. And I know what you're thinking, well, how come this move could be so good? Well, Leo has a couple gimmicks with this also. For one, 5H can be gatlinged into his far slash. But also, if you find that people are going to be counterpoking this button too much, you can just throw out far slash. And if that's not enough, far slash also goes into guard point as well and can be followed up just the same. And if you do land a long-ranged far slash, you can just Gatling back into it. Now, with that being said, just being able to Gatling back between far slash and heavy slash does not mean that it's invaluable. There is a gap between this. I believe it's about 5 frames. But what that means is if your opponent blocks, you get a frame trap. So the next move that we're going to be talking about is Leo's close slash. Now, this move is basically the party starter, right? So you can start big damage combos from this. You can set up tick throw setups. You can set up frame traps. Really, kind of like with everybody else, close slash is one of your best buttons. The only thing is you have to get close in order to use it, but land it either on hit or on block, you get crazy reward. Now, the next button that we're going to be talking about is Leo's 2K. So this is his longest range low poke that he has in the game. It comes out very quickly, and honestly, it's a great button. Again, you can extend the range on it with his dash momentum. On hit, this move will Gatling into 6K, which allows you to get a mini combo. And all around, it's just a really great button. So another move that Leo has that serves a very similar purpose to his 2K is Leo's 2S. This is one of Leo's only disjointed hurtbox moves, and it serves, like I said, a similar purpose to his 2K. However, the range is not as good as 2K, and on top of that, it's not as active. It is good, however, for counter-hitting low pokes because of that disjointed hitbox. So if your opponent is throwing slower pokes, you can use this to snipe them out, but to be honest, for most situations, you're probably just going to be using 2K. Now, we discussed this button earlier, but 5K is another one of Leo's god buttons. It gives Leo's forward momentum, so think of it kind of like Guile's bazooka knee, where you can charge back while using this button. It's a great button to set up tick throws. But on top of that, you also get a frame trap by doing 5K into 6K. So the next button that we're going to talk about is Leo's 5P. Now, this is his fastest button, so if you're ever in a situation where you need to be mashing a button, this is going to be it. It converts into itself, as well as going into 6P. And if that's not enough, this button can also be used as an anti-air because of its upward hitting hurtbox. The downside of this button is you don't have the upper body and vulnerability that a 6P would have, but you do get a better conversion off of it than Leo's 6P, so it's kind of a risk versus reward situation there. Speaking of which, that being said, we should also talk a little bit about his 6P. Again, it's a meterless anti-air, pretty much the same that everyone else has. The only downside about this move is that it does have a pretty long recovery window. So you have to be a little bit careful about throwing it out. You're really mostly going to be using this button just to be sniping people out of the air. As you can see, there's quite a bit of blowback on his 6P, so it's hard to get a decent follow-up afterwards. So that's why there's a lot of risk versus reward between using his 6P or his 5P. The last button that I want to talk about is Leo's 2D. Now, you guys probably remember this button as being a half-screen missile that Leo could throw out in previous patches. However, in 2.0, they've nerfed the dash momentum off this button quite a bit. It still hits from pretty far away, but you're not going to be getting any more half-screen 2Ds. On hit, this does cause a hard knockdown, which allows you to whiff run through and get a back turn mix-up. However, it is unsafe on block unless you have the tension to RC it. Next, we're going to be talking about Leo's jump buttons. I'll be honest with you, Leo's jump buttons are not great. They're incredibly situational, and 9 times out of 10, Leo does not want to challenge anybody in the air, but we can still just go over them briefly. So first button that we're going to be talking about is Leo's jump P. This button is cool because it does combo into itself. However, anytime where you're going to be using this button, you're probably just better off air throwing, as it gives you a better reward. Next, we're going to take a look at Leo's jump K. Now, this is a very active button, and it does have a low angle on it. And it's very deceptive because it kind of tricks you into thinking that it'd be a good air-to-air option or being a good jump in. However, it's neither of those. The best uses for jump K is either when Leo's already falling or by using it to create space during a back IAD. However, do I spam this as a jump in? Absolutely. Should I be? Probably not. Please learn from my mistakes. In a similar boat is Jump H. Now, kind of like Jump K, the best use case for this move generally is going to be a back IED to create space. But this does have a disjointed hurt box, so it actually can be used to punish slow, grounded moves like Soul's Gunflame. Next, we're going to be talking about Leo's Jump S. Now, this button can be used as an air-to-air, but it's still not the best for that. Now, it is multi-hitting, and it does hit above Leo, which, again, can trick you into thinking that this button is better than what it actually is, but your main use for it is going to be combo filler. Now, the last of Leo's jumping buttons is his Jump D. This button is okay. It can be used to mess with Leo's landing timing and bait out a 6P from your opponent. However, the main thing that you're going to be using this button for is hitting airborne opponents because it does cause a wall bounce if it hits anyone in the air. In short, you'd much rather not be trying to challenge your opponent in the air, so all of these are incredibly situational, like I said. Next, we're going to talk about Leo's special moves. First one up is his 236S, Erst. 236S is pretty great because you can use it as a combo ender, you can use it to catch backdashes, you can even use it as a long-range whiff punish with his dash momentum. If you have the meter to spend, you can also Red Roman cancel 236S to get even more damage.
To the hospital.
236H will perform Leo's fight, otherwise known as his run-through. 236H comes with a huge disclaimer, and that it's a very big noob trap. Now, what do I mean by this? There is a very huge problem with this move.
Don't look away.
If your opponent knows what they're looking for, it is incredibly easy to throw Leo out of run-through. And honestly, this late into the game, pretty much everybody, when they see Leo, is going to be looking for his run-through and try to throw you out of it, so you need to be careful about abusing it. That being said, though, there is counterplay. You can PRC run-through in order to bait throws. Next one that we're going to look at is 214S, Turbulence. This is another way that Leo's able to enter back turn, and honestly, probably the more consistent one. This move is unsafe on block, and on top of that, you can be thrown out of its startup. However, again, this is one of 3 ways that Leo is able to enter back turn stance. You're mainly going to be using this as a combo ender in order to enter back turn stance. But even if you don't want to enter back turn, it does cause a soft knockdown, which does give you a mix-up opportunity. Although, to be honest, 9 times out of 10, you're just going to be picking back turn regardless. Next, we're going to be looking at Leo's flash kick, charge down, press up, and either S or H. S flash kick is invincible, which means it's pretty decent for punishing gaps in your opponent's pressure or escaping Oki situations. However, the on-hit reward is pretty lacking because it just resets you to neutral. Conversely, the H version is not invincible. However, it does cause a soft knockdown, which does give you a mix-up opportunity. However, be aware that as of the 2.0 patch, depending on Leo's range, he will swap sides on his landing. This is now something that you need to keep an eye on. Next, we're going to be talking about Leo's Fireball, which is a charge back motion, press forward in either S or H. The S version comes out significantly faster. It will travel about 3/4 of the screen, and it is a multi-hitting fireball, so it will beat out single-hit projectiles. The H version has a much slower startup. It hits 4 times and will travel full screen. So S Fireball can be used in neutral to just annoy your opponents. H Fireball can be used as a way for Leo to cover his approach, provided that you have meter to be able to Roman cancel the startup. However, that being said, these moves still are weak to people jumping over and punishing you, and you are in a counter hit state, so keep that in mind. It is worth noting that these moves do not scrape the ground, so any move that hits low profile, like Soul's Night Raid Vortex, will beat these moves. Lastly, we're going to talk about Leo's supers. Now, his first super is one that you don't need to be in back turn stance for. It is performed by doing half circle back, forward, and H. Now as a 2.0, you can no longer Roman cancel this on whiff, so this move is risky to use as a reversal. And to be quite honest, any situation where you're going to be using a reversal super, you're probably better off just using S flash kick anyways. But there are still some pretty decent things about this move. For instance, pretty much anywhere a little bit less than half screen away, Leo will break the wall. And while I did just say that it's probably not the best reversal option, especially when you do have access to just doing flash kick, there are going to be situations where you don't have down charge, so this move does make an okay reversal option. Leo's other super, half circle back forward S, can only be done in his back turn stance. This is by far Leo's most damaging super. It can force a wall break, but obviously from not nearly as much range as his other super, but there are downsides about this move. For one, it does force Leo out of back turn anytime he uses it. But honestly, with that much damage, that's totally okay. Another really cheeky use of this move, because it's a full screen projectile and it does come out incredibly quick, you can use this as a full screen whiff punish. And there's also the super secret tech of the Giuna.
Giuna was right!
So real quick, I want to also discuss Leo's offense and pressure game. Now, a lot of Leo's offense relies on getting the opponent to mash into frame traps or scaring them so much that you can set up a tick throw. Pretty much you're just trying to get your opponent to play the world's most effed up game of rock, paper, scissors. It is worth noting that Leo's front turn pressure is infinitely better when your opponent is in the corner. This is because they can't escape pressure with a backdash, and it's also easier to connect with his shorter range moves like his close slash. The main pressure string that you're going to be using looks something like this. The reason why is that there is a ton of frame trap opportunities in this. Now, we've already discussed a frame trap from going from 5H into far S. However, there's also a frame trap between his 2S and his 5H. And on top of that, if you suspect your opponent isn't going to bite on the trap, you can also set up a tick throw setup, either from his close slash or his 2H. Either one of these will work and it'll put Leo into back turn stance, which we've already established is where Leo wants to be anyways. Like I discussed earlier, 5K also has a very similar idea. If your opponent is mashing a blocked 5K, you can Gatling into 6K for a frame trap. But with that being said, raw 5K is incredibly difficult to hit confirm on its own. You're probably already going to be buffering in 6K regardless. If your opponent doesn't bite on the frame trap, you might as well just end the string there because all of Leo's follow-ups are unsafe on block. But with that being said, whenever you're pressuring your opponent, you want to be thinking about moves in pairs because it can be hard to hit confirm just a single move by itself. So let's say you finally do get into back turn. What are you going to be doing from there? Well, for one, I don't want you to think that back turn is something that you need to stay in for the whole game. Think of it more as a way to tack on extra damage as a reward for getting a good combo. But let's go over what Leo has as far as options go in back turn. In back turn stance, Leo cannot block. However, you do have the option of being able to dash through your opponent, jump over your opponent for some god-awful reason, as well as access to new special moves and new normals. The first button that we're going to be talking about is Leo's back turn P. This is essentially just 6P in back turn stance. It is an anti-air for him. The next button is Leo's back turn kick. This is an unseeable low. It comes out incredibly quick and leads to a full combo. Back turn S is another incredibly disjointed move. It's by far his best one that he has. And this also works very well as a meaty on your opponent's wake up, as it can lead to a pretty big combo. Back turn H is an overhead that Leo can use. This can be used as a combo starter to initiate a 50-50 mix, or you can use it as combo filler. While in back turn stance, Leo doesn't really have the ability to block, however, he does have a parry in back turn D. Con Shield will parry any attack in the game from normals to supers and only loses to a throw. The downside of this move is it is incredibly slow on recovery. However, if you have meter, you can just PRC it. New to the 2.0 patch, Leo also has back turn jump, like I discussed earlier. During this jump, you can do follow-up attacks. This does allow Leo to have another disgusting left-right mix-up. It is also possible to create safe jump setups with this attack. However, I will say that it is vulnerable to 6Ps, so you do have to be careful about throwing this button out willy-nilly. During back turn stance, Leo does have access to the normal special moves that he has. He just has a couple new inclusions. First one that we're going to be discussing is his 214H, Blitzschlag. Now this button is usually used as a combo ender to cash out for big damage. Because it causes a rolling knockdown, you do have the opportunity for follow-up attacks. It is also by far Leo's best wall breaker without meter. If you hold H, Leo will retain back turn. The downside of this move, it does have incredibly slow startup, so you don't want to just be throwing it out while your opponent is blocking. However, you are plus 21 if it is blocked, so you pretty much can do whatever you want. The world is your oyster at that point. The next move that we're going to talk about is his 214K, otherwise known as his Power Bomb. This move really is a meme because the only thing that it'll do is beat an opponent blocking. If they backdash, jump, or even throw you, you are going to lose. However, consider the swagger. Also, just to mention, if you do hold K during the animation of this, you will retain back turn as well. Now, when talking about Leo's back turn pressure, you are very disgusting in this stance because you do have just a whole plethora of options to choose from. Mainly, you're going to be starting your pressure from kick. This is because it's unseeable, and again, it does lead to a full combo. You can do back turn kick twice to catch opponents trying to jump or throw. If your opponent is mashing, you can also frame trap them with back turn S into back turn H. Leo has a ton of options for his back turn pressure. I highly encourage you to check Dust Loop or the character Discord in order to find them all. But the most simple one that you're going to be using is back turn kick slash heavy slash into an ender. Now, with that being said, that does pretty much cover the basics of Leo. If you have any specific questions or anything like that, please feel free to let me know, and I'll try my best to answer it as best as I can. But other than that, like I said, that covers everything. I appreciate your guys' time, and remember, ape together strong.